It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Last week, Governor Tony Evers signed into law the state's next two-year, $111 billion budget. It includes a tax cut package over $1 billion, plus boosts in mental health spending at public schools.
This budget signing comes after months of negotiations between the Republican-controlled state legislature and the Evers administration, with some Democratic votes pushing it over the finish line in the state Senate.
Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers joins us now. Governor Evers, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Good morning. How's everybody today?
Good. Now let's dive right into some of the specifics here. WPR reports that some public school superintendents are worried that the lack of an increase in general school aid funding is going to force local school districts to raise property taxes to go to referendums. Are you concerned that the deal arrived here is going to lead to property tax increases for local school districts?
Well, it could. I guess it's a local issue. But, at the end of the day, we worked with the legislature to get, frankly, as much as we could for our schools. And, we ended up with $1.4 billion in spendable resources for them. So I'm sure when you compromise, you compromise. You don't get everything you want, and you get some things you do want. So do I have concerns about that? Of course you do. This is not a sprint. This is more than that. And we need to make sure that we continue to advocate for our schools. We did as best we could, and $1.4 billion in spendable money isn't chump change, but it's not exactly solving all the problems that our schools had. We've had years of underfunding our schools, and it's not going to get changed in just one budget, that's for sure.
One of your priorities was a boost in the special education compensation going to schools. That did end up in the final budget. How important was that for you?
Well, it's really important because two things. One is the state needs to provide more resources in the arena of special education, and it was a significant increase. It's the largest increase in special education funding from the schools in decades, and so that was really important. But at the end of the day, that also has the opportunity to use the state money for special education, because in the past what's happened is the school districts had to fund that out of their own money, and this way we're able to put those other dollars that they have at the school to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to make sure their kids are in a good place.
Turning to higher education, the UW system getting over $250 million budget boost. That came after Republicans at one point were saying in the assembly anyway, hey, maybe $89 million cut. What changed? What led to that compromise? There are some strings attached.
Certainly are, but we went from a $90 million cut to a $250 million positive, and so it was a good change. Obviously, we're still, we went years when the Board of Regents were forced to have no increases, not only from the state but not increasing issues around revenues from the students themselves. So it was a step in the right direction, and that's the important thing. People now understand the importance of state money for the University of Wisconsin system. And in addition to that, we had some really good wins as it relates to the building program at UW. Very many schools, many university schools have struggled, Stevens Point, La Crosse, Oshkosh, with Stout, UW-Madison, UW-Milwaukee, with building projects, and we got a lot of those taken care of this time also.
In the past, Republican state lawmakers have linked some university funding to calls for cuts in diversity programs. Now here we have this budget passed with that increase, and just now days later, UW-Madison says we are cutting our DEI office. Is there a link? Is there a quid pro quo there?
No, not at all. That decision was made by UW Madison, but they basically what they're trying to do is make sure that they're serving their students well, and obviously. To use a term, I hate to use this out loud, DEI is not something that the federal government's worried about, frankly, and the Republicans here in Wisconsin. So I think what they're trying to do is meet the needs of students. Period. It had nothing to do with the budget. But we did have some wins in this budget. I mean, there's no question. We've never had money from the state. Being part of childcare, early childhood education. We're now in a much better place with our hospitals with a $1.1 billion infusion there. And really important because the last thing we need is for two more, a couple of years ago, we had two hospitals in the Eau Claire area go out of business. We can't have that. We just can't have that. So we had some really good wins in the budget, and that's what frankly that's what compromising is all about. We're a purple state, and we want to make sure that we work together with all sides to get some good outcomes.
Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is with us talking about the new 2-year state budget. Moving to corrections, you had a plan to close the Green Bay Correctional Institution. I think pretty much everybody at the table agreed that Green Bay needed to close. The specific closing date was in the budget. You took that out. Why? What ended up happening in this kind of complicated plan?
Well, it's a complicated plan, and we've been waiting for a long time to get this done. Yes, we have to close Green Bay. There's no question about that. We're going to do it. But we've talked about this as long as I've been governor, and frankly, even before that, when I was state superintendent, we were talking about this issue. And because I was part of a committee that the former governor put together, we have to start with the closing down Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake and moving those kids out and making that into a medium security prison. And there's all these other things that have to happen first. We just can't say, well, tomorrow we're going to close Green Bay and those thousand people are going to be going where? We don't know. So I was torqued about this. We have to get this done. There's various ways we can do it, but just saying in a budget, well, we're going to close in 2029 is not a solution. We have to get the other pieces in place, and I'm willing to work with anybody on the other side to make this happen. Simple as that. Just a matter of getting it done.
Is there standalone legislation you're going to be looking for now that the budget is done to advance that mission?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready. We had a proposal out there for the legislature to take a look at. They've looked at it. They're spending some time thinking about what could be different than what we propose. Frankly, it doesn't make any difference to me. We have to start moving the children out of the northern Wisconsin into. We're building a facility in the Milwaukee area. We have some money in the budget now for putting one in the Madison area for juveniles, and we've got to start. It's just a matter of putting the pieces in place. And like I said, I'm willing to look at anything. This is, we're talking about compromise. We're talking about the fact that we're a purple state. We got to get this done, and I'm sure we will.
Another item left on the table, a stewardship conservation funding in Wisconsin, including the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Fund. That was left for separate legislation. You used your partial veto to block some money earmarked for specific projects. Where are negotiations for a possible standalone bill to tackle those kind of conservation purchases?
Yeah, and I think that's important because I think it has bipartisan support. It's just a matter of getting the right amount of money in, and so I think we'll get that done. I mean, Republicans and Democrats support our environment, and the stewardship fund is something that is key to making that happen. And so this is something we can continue to work on. We have to get it done. You see the compromise that was made with Knowles Nelson, one a Democrat, one a Republican, both cared about the environment. We still have that. We still have that mojo going here in Wisconsin, and we're going to get it done.
Briefly, this budget process seems to have worked a little differently than the last couple in the sense that you and your people and the Republican leaders and their people were talking to each other at various points in the process. What was different this time around? Because it seemed icier the last couple of processes.
Certainly, and I hear this. I travel the state almost every day. It seems like, to talk to people, talk to businesses, and go to schools, you name it. And I hear this time and time again, that people are hoping that we will compromise, that we'll work together with the other side, and so I think there was some kind of overall push from the people of Wisconsin saying, we understand we're a purple state. We're going to be a purple state for a long time. Get something done, work together, and we did that. Were there some wins there? Yes. Were there some things that could have been better? Yes. But at the end of the day, we worked together to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people of Wisconsin.
Finally, election season is coming around. You said earlier this year you would make an announcement at some point after the budget was done. The budget is done. Do you have an announcement for us?
Not today. It'll happen in the very near future.
What do you weigh as you make that decision in our last half a minute?
Yeah, it's about what we've accomplished, what we have yet to do, personal issues, you name it. I'm not, do I think that if I ran again that I would win? Of course, there's no question about that. So that piece isn't something I'm concerned about. It's just the rest of the pieces, and we'll put it together in the next few days or next week or so, and we'll make an announcement.
Governor Evers, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate it.
That's Tony Evers, Democratic governor of Wisconsin. Been talking about the recently signed 2-year state budget. You can get a lot more details from our news team online at WPR.org.
Coming up on Wisconsin Today, for decades, PFAS, toxic forever chemicals, have been a staple ingredient in firefighting foams. But a new product in the works is made of soybeans.
Over 50% of the contents in the bucket is from a rapidly renewable, sustainable product grown every year from our soybean farmers.
Putting out blazes with soy, that's next on WPR News.
It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Ferret.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. For decades, toxic forever chemicals, PFAS, have been a key ingredient in firefighting foams. These are the foams that firefighters spray to extinguish all sorts of blazes.
PFAS are human-made chemicals that repel water and oil. That makes them really good at putting out tough fires. But they don't break down in the environment and have links to causing a number of health problems in people, including various kinds of cancer.
Nearly 5 years ago, the State Department of Natural Resources banned the use of firefighting foams that contain PFAS except in emergency operations. Now, a company with Wisconsin connections is trying to replace PFAS foams by using a new foam made from soybeans.
Wisconsin is home to roughly 16,000 soybean farmers who harvested over 2 million acres of soybeans statewide last year. Could firefighting foam be a new market for their crops?
To find out, we turn to Dave Garley, Chief Technology Officer and a managing partner at Cross Plains Solutions. The company is a manufacturer of soy-based firefighting foam. Dave, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kate from Wisconsin Public Radio. Glad to be here.
How is soy-based firefighting foam different from what fire departments are using now?
Well, first and foremost, it is made from our very own farmer soybeans. Over 50% of the contents in the bucket is from a rapidly renewable, sustainable product grown every year from our soybean farmers. And so by doing so, it displaces a tremendous amount of petroleum that is traditionally used to make effective firefighting foams. And then if you go through all the channels and do the certifications, there's a governing body called Green Screen Chemicals. And what they allow us to do is it's an organization called From Clean Production Action. Long short of it is they can rate the health and safety aspects of firefighting foams. And so when you go through that process, because we're using soybeans, because we're bio-based, because of all the and we're non-petroleum based, we've got the highest green screen certification rating in the world, and that's a gold rating. And that's something we're very, very proud of.
How can soy be a fire suppressant? Can you help explain the chemical processes going on here?
I sure can. So we're using the protein from the soybean. And so for the firemen that are listening to this broadcast, protein foams are not new. In fact, before the PFAS, our problem child came on board, they used to use protein foams, but they were from animal parts. They were effective, but they had a lot of nuances. They became rancid. They were very difficult of handling. They were effective, but they weren't fun to use. So during that journey, PFAS chemistry came in the limelight and addressed all of those concerns that they typically had with the protein foams. Unfortunately, we're dealt with the crisis we are today across the nation. We have a contaminate issue from the chemical PFAS and its cumulative effect on our environment. So when I got brought into this project, I said, well, let's revisit chemistry that worked yesterday and address the challenges that it presented. So instead of using animal parts, what's the other major source of protein in our country? That's from soybeans. So the soybean part that we're using is from actually the soybean meal. And that's a byproduct from the crush facility. So when the soybean goes to the crush facility, it's separated into components. One component is the oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil. And the other component is soybean meal, which can be further processed into or fed out to livestock or repurposed for human consumption. We're using the meal part because it has a great deal of protein content in it.
You know, some of these rural fire departments in Wisconsin might be surrounded by soybean fields. Maybe some of the volunteer firefighters are actually soybean farmers. What do you see as the connection there?
And that's the beauty about the connectivity piece. So to get to the channel of the market to develop, produce, and promote an alternative firefighting foam takes money. And so because of how the soybean farmers are structured, they have checkoff dollars. And those checkoff dollars basically represent of 0.5% of 1% of their beans that go to market is held back for purposes to promote the use of soybeans and create demand for their product. This is an extension of that effort. So we're utilizing those checkoff dollars to repurpose their beans, develop a new market, do the research and the promotional events to create a new market and create more demand for their beans. And your point's well taken. If you take a look at Wisconsin, 700 some fire departments across the state, and overwhelmingly are volunteer, like 85+%. And if you take a look at those, where those volunteer fire departments are located, they're in rural Wisconsin. And most of rural Wisconsin is connected to the agricultural community. And lo and behold, they're made up of volunteer firefighters. And not surprising, most of the volunteer firefighters across the country happen to also be farmers. So it's a really good way for them to see their product that they grow get repurposed into a need that is needed in every community across the country. And that's soybeans to replace the bad actors.
And update us on deployment here. From what I understand, 10 Wisconsin fire departments have bought some of this firefighting foam. Dozens more have samples. What are you hearing from fire departments that use the soy-based foam?
Very good. So we basically targeted, there's 32 qualified state soybean boards that are supported by the National United Soybean Board, and all of that's made up of checkoff dollars. And so in Wisconsin's very own soybean marketing board, led by Adam Cass, our executive director, is a part of that process. So every state manages how do they want to promote the use of soy in their state through their marketing dollars. We're an extension of that. So the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board has funded a rollout program, what events we're going to attend, how they want to promote it across the state of Wisconsin. As a result of that journey, a lot of departments have been sampled the soy foam. They've been introduced to the soy foam, and they've actually had a chance to test the soy foam. So part of my job is to support the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board with those initiatives. For the state of Wisconsin, for example, we have a lot of counties that have quarterly fire chiefs meetings. And in those events, every fire department will send a representative, typically the chief. They have a quarterly meeting. I'll get invited to those events, talk about the soy foam, bring samples, hand those samples out, and then we can either collectively run demos together, or they will take a sample and do their own demonstration to determine if it's fit for use. And that seems to be the best approach to get the message out to Wisconsin, but also to get acceptance of the product for their community and it's fit for use.
From what I'm hearing, the United Soybean Board really helped with furthering the research and development here on this application. Is that right?
Most definitely. So when we got into the program, we were asked to come up with a training foam for the New York Fire Department, which happened to have a connectivity to the United Soybean Board. And so during that collaboration, it came upon to them that, we had the technical expertise and the scientists to really drive that project forward. And in doing so, they've funded a lot of the research effort, which, for full disclosure, is done right here in Wisconsin at the Chippewa Valley Technical College. They have a beautiful fire safety center. So I happen to live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and we're able to take advantage of that location, access to, state-of-the-art fire safety training center, and to conduct this research. And by doing so, we've been able to come up with a product called soy foam that we've launched just over a year ago across the country that has been well received for sure and growing.
So if this bio-based, PFAS-free soy foam, I'm wondering, is it a proprietary recipe? Could there be a competitive market for these soy-based foams? And if it is proprietary, is that holding back its application?
I don't think so. If you're in the business to make money, and of course we file a patent, we do have a recipe that we put together through research dollars, but we encourage it, right? So I'm from the front that, I've worked in this field for 30 years, taken corn and beans, and then repurpose them to displace petroleum to give us relief for environmental health effects of petroleum into the building and construction segments. And in doing so, we encourage more institutions, more companies to adopt this building block to build out the portfolio to displace the likes of petroleum for that particular reason. Displace petroleum chemistry and give, our farmers another access to markets, renewable, sustainable building blocks, but it also provides community assurance that we're not going to repeat the PFAS events. We're going to replace it with something that we can address the environmental impacts. We can address the health adverse effects of petroleum products. So we encourage it. And we'll work with anybody to do it.
Do you see that diversification happening in firefighting foam products? Is that occurring?
I know that there's mandates across the country from the federal level to the state level to ban the use of PFAS. In fact, they're taking it one step further to ban the use of any fluorinated firefighting foam. And so there is efforts by companies and institutions to find those alternatives. What I'd like to see more of, instead of replacing petroleum chemistry with petroleum chemistry, give it a shot. Take a look at corn, take a look at beans, take a look at the polysaccharides that are readily available and the vegetable oils that we have at our disposal, and repurpose those building blocks into more functional systems.
We're talking about a PFAS-free soy-based firefighting foam with Dave Garley, Chief Technology Officer for a company that manufactures soy-based firefighting foam. Dave, military applications are a big part of firefighting foam, And what is the process there with the Department of Defense and its use and uptake of like a soy-based fire suppressant?
Right. So every market has certain certifications, and the federal government is no short of those certifications. So particularly for the Department of Defense, they have a military specification, and it typically surrounds itself with what those installations utilize for fuel. And so in this particular case, the certification requires extinguishment of Jet A fuel and gasoline, which are the most prevalent fuels at a military base. And PFAS firefighting foams have dominated that scene for quite some time. Unfortunately, we heard the ramifications, the fallout from that, like Camp Lejeune, and they're in crisis mode. They're finding alternatives to those PFAS aqueous film forming foam firefighting foam solutions. So there's efforts underway to do that. We're part of that process. So we're doing all that research here in Eau Claire at Chippewa Valley Technical College to find that alternative to AFFF PFAS. And so the journey's been going on for a couple of years. We should have something that's fit for use, full certification profile, by the end of this year.
So soy foam could be then effective on both Class A and Class B fires. Can you help us understand the distinction there and the market for firefighting foam?
Yeah, so Class A fires are your typical structure fires, like wood fire, your house fire.
Okay.
Grass fire could be considered Class A. And so those types of firefighting foams are typically built out to lower the surface tension of water so it penetrates the fuel. So a visual would be if you had a cup of water and you dumped it on a piece of cardboard, it typically just runs off. If you put a drop of a wetting agent, which is a Class A firefighting foam, in that glass of water and dumped it back on the cardboard, you would see it penetrate in the cardboard, soak right in. And that's what they're looking for Class A firefighting foams. So that's considered a Class A firefighting foam. Class B are your fuel fires. So those are typically going to be your non-polar fuels like gasoline, like Jet A. And then you have your polar Class B firefighting foams, which is considered like alcohol, ethanol. So there's two distinct Class B type foams. And so the soy foam that we're promoting today is a Class A and a Class B foam. It'll extinguish your non-polar Class B fuels like diesel, Jet A fuel, gasoline, and then it'll also extinguish all the Class A fuels like brush fires, house fires, car fires. So it's considered a Class A, Class B.
Are there risks to soy-based or other bio-based products that we haven't discovered yet or we just don't know yet?
So the risk to me with any time you use an agricultural building blocks would be performance, right? So the one beauty about the AFFF PFAS firefighting foams, they were very effective. They worked great. And what we have to do from a science community is we've got to not drop the performance criteria of that chemistry. We have to figure out a way to derivatize Mother Nature, agricultural building blocks, to meet those performance criteria. So to me, the risk is lowering standards to the point where we're putting our first responders and firefighters in harm's way because the performance of the expectation of the firefighting foam is not the same. They train with it. So we just got to make sure that as a community, we're working together to keep our first responders and firefighters safe with a product that they meets their expectations for keeping our community safe in extinguishments.
Wisconsin can also have extreme weather, very hot summer, very cold winter. How does a soy foam hold up to extreme temperatures?
So in the certification process, you have to disclose what your pour point is, your freeze point. You have to disclose what your hot point is or your flash point. And so what we have to do is we want to measure those criteria to make sure we report that on the container that says, fit for use between these temperature range. So for example, if a fire truck has a foam tank but doesn't have a heater, it could freeze. If they're at a job site and they're out there 14 hours, there's a possibility in the middle of January that that tank could freeze. The beauty about soy foam is it doesn't crystallize when it freezes like water. So you're not going to pop pipes, fracture. You're going to basically turns to a gel, but you can't pump it. So it's unusable. But if you bring the truck back into the station and warm it up, it'll repurpose itself. So you just have to be conscious about what the limitations are for the temperature ranges of operation.
Wisconsin has about 16,000 soybean farmers. One day, do you think that their harvests will be going toward this soy-based firefighting foam?
Most definitely, and it might today already. So Wisconsin doesn't have a crush facility today, but they grow a lot of soybeans. So typically, the channel to market for a lot of the soybeans, and I don't know the channel to market for Wisconsin in particular, but there are Wisconsin, I know that there's crush facilities in Iowa and Minnesota that source Wisconsin soybeans. So there's a very good chance that Wisconsin soybeans are already worked their way through the supply chain into these products.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Dave Garley is Chief Technology Officer for Cross Plains Solutions. That is a manufacturer of soy-based firefighting foam. And we've been discussing a PFAS-free firefighting foam alternative that's made from soybeans.
Still ahead, Superior is home to the first Carnegie Library built in Wisconsin and the last one built in the state. Now they're both for sale. Take a tour with a retired librarian.
Everything is kind of still there, you know, the woodwork and the beautiful staircases. And I was amazed when I went up to the top floor that the old boardroom and the old art room are in perfect shape.
That's next here on Wisconsin Today.
You're listening to Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Now it's time for Wisconsin Life. Here's producer Bridget Bowden with a story about a performer who's become a fixture at Wisconsin baseball games. It's part of WPR's Wisconsin Road Trip series, featuring pit stops across the state to explore the people, places, and things that make Wisconsin summers special.
For some people in Wisconsin, baseball is a summer staple. And for Kenosha Kingfish fans, there's a baton-twirling usher who is an icon at the team's Northwoods League games. WPR's Evan Casey has more from the ballpark.
For the land of the free and the home of the brave.
A day at the ballpark is one of the best parts of summer. It's Father's Day at historic Simmons Field, the home of the Kenosha Kingfish. The team is part of the Northwoods League, and their games have something for everyone.
And I want you to buy him a Philly cheesesteak for Father's Day. No more ties, no more mugs, Philly cheesesteaks.
Another fixture at Kingfish games is Jane Snedeker. Before the game, she's handing out special wristbands to fans.
So this is your wristband. It's
okay.
good for food through
The 75-year-old retired school teacher is a Jane of all trades. She's a host mom, an usher, and has even donned the team's King Elvis mascot suit. But to most fans, she's known as Twirling Jane.
I started twirling when I was in 6th grade on Long Island.
Over 60 years and a move to the Midwest later, Snedeker still hasn't put her batons down. She used to perform a quick twirling routine during long pitching changes and delays. Now, it's a nightly ritual at every home game. Snedeker parades around behind home plate to the tune of YMCA, and she invites anyone and everyone to join in on the fun.
It's a little awkward to go up to people that you don't know and ask them to join, but sometimes some of the kids are coming up to me I usually keep a baton in my car at all times. You never know when you have to have a parade or something.
Snedeker is also a host mom. Around 80 college players from across the nation will cleat up for the Kingfish this summer, and many of them need a place to stay.
I learned that some of the players needed housing, and I live a mile away. My husband had died, and I had 2 sons, and I thought, well, maybe that would be good for the kids, and I can help out the team.
It's hard to estimate just how many people have stayed with her. Most summers, 1 or 2 players take up her guest rooms. But during the 1995 season, she had 6 players in her home. Some slept in the basement, while others took over the family room.
It was fun because if I would look on the field, sometimes my house was all in the field. I might have, I had an outfielder, I had a first baseman or something like that.
Most of the players are college students, which means they cannot get paid to play for the Kingfish. But they can accept donations of room and board. In the meals, Snedeker regularly cooks for them. Pennsylvania native Robbie Porco stayed with her last summer. He says she cooked breakfast for him every morning and even had warm cookies waiting at home if the team won.
I mean, she was everything I could have asked for as like a host mom for the summer, like super accommodating. It was like her house was my house, that kind of thing.
In all, there are around 20 host families for the team. Eva Hoy is another one of them. Back at the ballpark, she says she's known Jane for several years.
And when you stop her, she'll say, "What do you have now? You know who I have? You know how many I have in the back?" So it's her energy level. It's she's always got new ideas, and she'll say, "Here, hold these pom-poms. I have to do this."
Snedeker means so much to baseball in Kenosha that the team had a bobblehead night in her honor. Several teachers she knows in Kenosha came to the game, and her sons came back into town from California.
It was a lot of fun. I was glad it didn't rain. The Kingfish won, and there was a lot of fun going on here.
When it comes to baton twirling at games, Snedeker says she doesn't plan on stopping anytime soon.
WPR's Evan Casey brought us that story on Twirling Jane of the Kenosha Kingfish. Wisconsin Life is a co-production of Wisconsin Public Radio and PBS Wisconsin. Additional support comes from Lowell and Mary Peterson of Appleton. I'm Bridget Bowden.
This is Wisconsin Today.
The first and last Carnegie libraries built in Wisconsin are both in Superior, and they're both for sale.
In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the steel mogul and philanthropist Andrew Carnegie donated $56 million to build over 2,500 libraries worldwide, with the majority of them being in the U.S.
Carnegie said he believed free libraries were a public good. His gift made free public libraries the standard in the U.S. 63 of them were built in Wisconsin.
Teddy Moronic is a retired librarian and a local Superior historian. She worked at both of Superior's Carnegie libraries. Teddy, welcome back to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you for inviting me again.
How did Superior come to be the first city in Wisconsin to have a Carnegie library?
Well, I guess we're fast workers up here, maybe because of the cold. Because we didn't get the first grant in Wisconsin from Carnegie for a library. Both Green Bay and Sheboygan beat us, but we finished our library first.
Ah, okay. And what makes Carnegie libraries unique? Why are they so special?
Well, I think it's just the thought of Andrew Carnegie deciding that he was going to give away 90% of his wealth to improve the lives of people. And Superior had a library, but before we got the first Carnegie, the libraries were all in rented buildings. So we didn't have a permanent home here. And I think that was the greatest benefit of this, is that we had a building that we knew was ours and was always going to be ours because of the generosity of Mr. Carnegie.
And East End Carnegie Library, that was the last Carnegie Library to be built in Wisconsin. It opened in 1918, becoming a private residence in 1992, now on the market again. Why did this particular building stop being a library?
Well, they both stopped being a library because Superior had decided it was time for a new library and had renovated a former grocery store into our new library. So not only was East End branch closed, the main library was closed, and we had 2 station libraries in neighborhoods that were also closed and consolidated into one building.
And you used to work at the East End Carnegie Library. What did this building, what was it like as it was bustling and you were working in it? How did it speak to you?
The East End Library had been my childhood library. So this was sort of a dream come true for me. And some of the books I had read were still on the shelf. But it was a great library because it was built with the idea in mind that East End was too far from the library downtown, and also because East End had so many schools so close to the library. We had 2 Catholic schools, a public school, and a high school that were in walking distance of the library, most of them only a couple blocks away. So it was a great place for the kids. And that's something I always concentrated on when I was a librarian there, making sure we had programs for the kids, story hours and all of that. It was a wonderful job.
And you recently toured the building with a realtor. What was it like to see the inside that was your old workplace and then converted to a home?
Well, it took me about 15 years to go in there the first time after the library moved out. And they've done a lovely job on the upstairs, but it's not a library anymore. And I understand that. I never expected those buildings to stay as they were, but some ways it was harder for me to see East End than it was to see the main library downtown. It's just, it was just really hard. But as I said, they've done a nice job, and I have all these memories that extend from childhood on about it.
Can you share one of those memories?
From when I was young? Oh my gosh. When I think back on it, my mother and dad were both great readers, and my mother would always send me to the East End Library with the titles of books that she had read when she was young. And sure enough, I would find them there. And it's a great experience for a kid to have a neighborhood library, because that's your first step towards adulthood, because your parents allow you, at least they did when I was growing up, they allow you to walk to the library, which was only a block away, of course, and they let you go there and choose what you want to read. And I always think of that. I can still see the books on the shelves from when I was a kid. I was obsessed with all these biographies of famous women, and the library had a whole set of those books. And I just thought that was the most exciting thing, that I was allowed to go there and make my own choices about what I was going to bring home.
We're talking about the first and last Carnegie libraries to be built in Wisconsin. They're both for sale. They're both in Superior. And Teddy Moronic worked at these libraries, is also a local historian. Teddy, take us to the Hammond Avenue Carnegie Library. So this is the library that was the first to be built in Wisconsin, the first Carnegie Library built here. It opens in 1902, serves as a library until 91, but also the Friends of the Superior Carnegie Library got involved in this particular structure. How have the Friends groups helped out with these?
I don't know. I just think, this is my personal opinion. I don't know. There's so many things that went on that people got involved or decided they could make something out of this library, and everything failed time after time after time. People had its best interests at heart, but from the very beginning, the problem with the main library is that when it was sold to the first developers, the title to the land had not been cleared. So they couldn't make a move on developing it until that happened. So, and that's why it looks like it does today.
What does it look like inside? how much has it fallen apart?
First time I walked around it last summer, I hadn't been around the building in many years, and the windows are low on the bottom floor to the ground, and you can see in. And I had realized where my desk was when I first started at the library and worked there, that the floor had fallen in. And then when I went in it this time, it was unimaginable to me what had happened. And it was such a beautiful building, even in 1992 with all its problems. You know, when we left on, New Year's Eve 1991, it had lots of problems, but they could have been fixed.
The city is now seeking another developer to purchase the building. What might potential tenants and future uses look like, and what would preserve its historical character?
Well, the thing is, at the main library, everything is kind of still there, the woodwork and the beautiful staircases. And I was amazed when I went up to the top floor that the old boardroom and the old art room are in perfect shape. The director's office is in very good shape. Everything else is just terrible. But I would like to see that happen, like somebody would take the bones that are there and work with them. Initially, they were going to, make it into apartments. That would be okay with me. I mean, I'd love to see it as a, coffee shop / bookstore or something, but I don't know if that's even possible nowadays, and especially in Superior, we're a small town. So I don't know. The only thing I want is somebody to take care of it and love it as much as all of us who work there did.
What did you love about your work as a librarian?
I loved being the first person to see the new books. I loved the kids that I worked with. I loved my patrons. I loved that the opportunity that the library gave me. They gave me the opportunity to become sort of to dive deeply into Superior's history, because that was my job when I moved to the new library. I was to become the local history librarian. I got the chance to read all about Superior's history, which I had known nothing about, and just fell in love with it. And to me, that was the greatest blessing. It was that I got to learn about my hometown in depth. And I met so many great people through that, not only in Superior, but practically all over the world who are interested in Superior. I always say at least one person, everybody has at least one person that has a connection to Superior, Wisconsin.
Teddy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for talking with me and letting me share my love of the Superior libraries.
Teddy Moronic is a retired librarian and a historian in Superior. She worked at both of Superior's Carnegie libraries, and now these libraries are for sale and in need of new development. We've been exploring some histories of old buildings and landmarks in Wisconsin communities, and you wrote in about your own history projects.
Catherine in Stoughton writes, a few months before my dad passed away, I talked to him about his 1957 summer job as a dishwasher on the Santa Fe Railroad. I put together a PowerPoint based on our conversation so I could better understand what he did. After he passed away, Catherine did more research, finding images to help fill in the details, and says it was a very meaningful project for both of us, though we never got quite to see it finished.
Catherine, thank you for sharing your story. Keep talking about your history projects and what you're discovering and what you are working to document. Email us at wisconsintoday@wpr.org or call or text to get in touch with us. The number is 888-642-0232.
We'd love to hear from you, and thanks for contributing to the program.
Wisconsin Today producers include Royce Podeswa and Colleen Leahy. Our technical directors are Sarah Hopeful and Tyler Ditter.
Tim Peterson is the managing producer. Dean Knetter is our executive producer.
Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Ferrett. You're listening to WPR News.